And welcome to Studio Church. Glad you can make it. Another fine summer day. Had a little bit of rain, but that's okay. We're getting through that. So yeah, take a moment, introduce yourself to your neighbor, and share your name. You know, it's interesting to note there's one thing that people really connect with, and that is their name. I mean, when you introduce yourself to somebody, you introduce your name, and sometimes a little bit about what you do, or if you're, sometimes we share our career and that type of thing as part of our introduction. Maybe that's not the right thing to do. But if somebody just looks at you and says, "Hey, you," suddenly we're on this almost defensive mode where, this person knows nothing about me. So I have to start from ground zero and try and build up a relationship with this person as to who I really am, or who I think I really am. Sometimes what we think and what we feel and what we say are very different things, and that can have an effect on friends and friendships and relationships. And that's what the second part of this message is, of friendships and relationships, and it's called Recipients Name. And I guess that's kind of an introduction when somebody yells, "Hey, you," that we just become a recipient. Suddenly we're not a person that this person knows or that they can associate with or have a conversation with, that sort of thing. So now we need to start at ground zero and build up that relationship with that person. So, you know, the dictionary says that a recipient is a person. A recipient can receive a wide variety of things, including a letter, telephone call, message, money, or even a physical embrace. So a recipient is just another person on the street who you're interested in getting more information about. Now, this is kind of dry start to the message, but there's a point to all of this. Is the reason is that because nobody knows you. So you are just a recipient. You're just another person on the street, walking down the street, and really have no connection with anybody that wants to get more information from you. It could be on a forum, could be standing in a lineup, waiting to get to some information or whatever from an information booth. You're just a recipient. You're not in a relationship or a friendship with that person. That doesn't mean that we can't be friendly and we can't be relationship building in our progress and our process. But at that particular point in time, you're just a recipient until people get to know you. So this is, like I said, the second part of the series called Recipients Name. Now, let's look at the flip side of that. If you enter a race and you get a number, your name is replaced by a number. And it's a preference thing. We want to do that because we want to be associated with the race. We want to be in the race. So in order to be in the race, you have to have a number, because they can't have people going in there with just their name, because two people can have the same name, or even 3 or 4 people can have the same name. So instead of saying, there goes Lucius down the track, and not Lucius with the blonde hair, but Lucius with the braided hair. So in order to get around that things, we just give people a number. So it's kind of cold, but I mean, we accept that because the outcome of the race could be in our favor, so we like that. Even if you're in prison and they give you a number, that you're not a name, you could be using somebody else's name when you go in there for all they know. So they give you a number with a picture, and that identifies you with that picture. So they need to categorize us to people like in races or in prison or in other, even on your driver's license, there's a picture and a number. Your name's on there, but the picture and the number are what they go by. So sometimes, you know, we can put ourselves in this kind of somewhat of a prison by the type of things that we say and do, and that categorizes us. When people look at us and see our actions and how we interact with people, that kind of puts us into a category that they think that we should be in. And it could be completely wrong. It could be completely against our character. It could be absolutely contrary to what we say, do, and believe. But our motives, our actions, and other things just give that away. And it allows them, instead of saying, "Hey, you," they go, "Oh, it's that kind of person." So those are some of the things that we need to keep our eye out for. And, having a number to your name, as in your driver's license or a criminal or even in a race, we sometimes don't want that, but then sometimes we do. Sometimes it's beneficial and sometimes it's not, and all we have to do is look at the Pharisees and how they tried to egg the crowd on in order to hate Jesus. Now there's another kind of image that can be created about us that's created by other people. Now, if they have ulterior motives or they have a darker presence to their thought processes, their motives are going to be a little slicker. They're going to be a little darker and a little edgier. And it's going to take people off guard and completely by surprise when they share this information about you, but you know it's not true. They know it's not true, but they're using that information to make it true, as they did with Jesus. They said all kinds of things about him. They took his words and twisted them around and increased the potential of what he said to make it look like he was doing and saying wrong things. So Jesus knew who he was, and the Pharisees knew that. So why would the Pharisees do that? Well, because they felt threatened because of Jesus' potential. That's really the only reason. Why would you do something like that unless you are threatened by the person that you're doing that to? I mean, if you have a skill set that you recognize as good, and this person has a skill set that they recognize that as good, and those two are in competition or in conflict with each other, and it doesn't have to be a physical or verbal conflict. It can be absolutely subtle. It can be absolutely behind the scenes where nothing ever shows up. And that's what they did to Jesus. They did all of that stuff behind the scenes with the Roman leaders and officials and with the crowd. They egged the people on in order to create a disparaging image of Jesus. And it says in Matthew 8:31, it says, the demons begged Jesus, if you drive us out, then send us into that herd of pigs. So if the Pharisees knew who Jesus was and Jesus knew who he was, even the demons knew who Jesus was, but they respected that. The Pharisees did not respect that. And the crowd did not respect Jesus out of absolute ignorance because of everything that the Pharisees were saying. So you see the triplex of complex thinking that goes on in that whole situation, where one person is absolutely right and true, which is Jesus. The demons knew that Jesus was absolutely right and true, so they could only speak the truth. And then the Pharisees knew that Jesus was very threatening to their very way of life, so they knew that Jesus could possibly be true. But it was too much for them to bear because they had to look after their own interests instead of that. So the one thing I've learned about relationships, this is something I call the 1/3 rule. It's where 1/3 of the people will be totally for you, 1/3 of the people will be totally against you, and the other third of the people, they just don't care either way. You could convince them either way with all of the facts, but sometimes they just don't want to waste the time to do that, to collect all those facts. So they just stay out of the situation. I've learned that people who tell everyone who you are have a respect for you. On the contrary, when you have people who tell other people who you aren't, then they don't have a respect for you. So that's the dichotomy there between the 1/3 who's for you, the 1/3 who's against you. And then there's this third group of people. When those people tell disparaging things about you, they go, oh yeah, really? Okay, well, whatever. I don't care. It really doesn't apply to me. Whereas this group of people will tell them and say, oh, well, this is so true about that person. They'll go, oh, really? Well, I don't really care because it doesn't really apply to me. So you see, that's the third group of people in that 1/3 rule. Now, if we look in NIV, Mark 1, verses 23, it says, "Just then a man in the synagogue who was possessed by an impure spirit cried out, 'What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are. You're the Holy One of God.'" So these demons, they just could not resist telling the truth about Jesus. And that's what demons do. They tell the truth about people. But they also twist that truth in order to make it something that it's not real. But there's always an element of truth. So, I mean, that's why our walk in our life must be so clear and so concise to avoid situations like that. So whatever those demons say about you is absolutely true. And if everything you do is based on the Bible and is absolutely true, then you have no worry. But when you have ulterior motives and turn your head kind of comments and things like that, what I mean by that is comments that are not completely true, or comments that they're lacking information. Those are little places where demons can hang their anchor on and stay with you and allow you to just keep talking the way you do with that anchor hooked into your soul and keep modifying the truth or altering the truth. So it's very important that we stay aware of that. Those demons did not deny Jesus, and they did not dare say anything false about him, because there was nothing false about him. They couldn't say anything false about him. If they would have said anything false about him, I imagine they'd probably just explode out of the absolute power that radiates from Jesus. But the people who tell others what they think you are not, they're not the ones who have motive. And so how does a person differentiate between these people? People who are for you, people who are against you, and those people who are indifferent. You know, I have this really interesting story. One of my first jobs was delivering farm irrigation equipment to farms in southern Alberta. And we'd load these 40-foot long pieces of pipe onto trailers, and then I'd drive out to the farmyard and pull into the yard, and sometimes there's nobody around except the dogs. So I found there's three kinds of dogs. This one-third rule kind of applies to animals as well. So the first dog runs up, and he jumps up on, he's scratching on the side of the door, and his tongue's flapping, his tail's wagging. You just know that it's okay to get out, because this dog, if he could speak, he's saying, "Oh God, I'm so glad there's people here, it's so boring around here." So that kind of dog is absolutely friendly, and he will be your friend for whatever, for life. Then there's another dog where you pull up, and the dog just walks around the truck, and he glances at you every once in a while and just keeps meandering around the truck. This dog's on guard, like he's waiting for something to fall out of place so that he can jump on you. Those dogs are not too bad. As long as you get out of the truck and you don't move quick, and you stand there and just let them sniff you and look around and that sort of thing, then it seems okay. They get used to the fact that you're not there to damage or destroy anything. You're there for a genuine purpose. Dogs can smell people. They can smell motives. They can smell when they don't want somebody out of the truck. I just remember this one fellow with us. He would not get out of the truck because the dogs would growl at him. I have no idea why. He never said why. He was just afraid to get out, so he stayed in the truck on this one farm. And then there's this third kind of dog, sitting on the step, looking off, almost like he's sort of Napoleon or some sort of thing. And you walk up to the house slowly, and he doesn't look at you. And the minute you put your foot on the first step, his lip starts to quiver, and his teeth are starting to bare. And those are the dogs that I've learned, back away, and get back in the truck and wait for the farmer. Because those dogs they're going to attack you if you get any closer to the house. Those are genuine attack dogs. So those are the three kind of dogs. I don't know what it has to do with the story, but I mean, it's just a funny story and how it relates to people. And people can be like that as well, you know. People can be so happy to see you. And they just want to be your friend right off the bat, and it's easy to associate with them, and it's easy to communicate with them because they're so appreciative of just your presence. And we can be like that too, where we can just extend ourselves like that with certain people and become instant friends. And the relationship from then on is always pleasant. Then there's the other dog who kind of people who kind of walk around and look at you and just checking things out, making sure that you're not some sort of axe murderer or something like that. And then after a while, they get used to you, and the relationship solidifies at that point. And then there's that third kind, where you approach them, and their lip might as well go, because they want nothing to do with you. They don't like you already. Something in their memory, maybe, of a person that looks like you, talks like you, sounds like you, walks like you. They don't like it already. So sometimes there's not a lot you can do about that, except just leave the person alone, and maybe one day they'll get used to it. Who knows? Okay, now so let's switch tracks here and talk about Saul or Paul. So now you can begin to understand Paul, the disciple, after his conversion with the 3 days of being blind on the way to Damascus, that when he finally realized that he was persecuting God, he was persecuting Christians, but God said, "Why are you persecuting me?" Jesus said that to Saul, and Saul, he said, "When did I persecute you, Lord?" And then the story came out that Paul, by condoning Christians be stoned and jailed and brutalized in all ways, that he was persecuting God, not Christians. The Christians were in the way, but the ultimate goal for him that he did not realize was God. He had a spirit with him trying to defeat God, and it wasn't working because God took his sight away in order for him to suddenly realize just what he was doing. So it says in Acts 9:13, this is in the NIV, it says, "Lord," Ananias answered, "I have heard many reports about this man and all the harm he has done to your holy people in Jerusalem. And he has come here with authority from the chief priests to arrest all who call on your name." There's Saul's image. It had surged through the whole countryside. Everybody knew about Saul. Everybody knew about his desire to destroy the Christians of that day. And Ananias didn't want anything to do with it, but God said, no, you don't understand. He is going to become an anchor of the faith. He's going to become my warrior. So Ananias reluctantly went and saw Saul and restored his sight through God's power and his action, his actual willingness to step in there and talk to this man who had been killing Christians, stoning them to death. So, what would you do? I don't know what I would do. I would, hopefully, I try and follow everything that the Lord tells me to do, as much as I question it or maybe disagree with it. As long as it's legal, moral, and ethical, and it can be found in the Bible, then I'm obligated to do it. But if I'm told to do something and it's not in this book, then it's questionable, and I should not do it. So we can categorize people, or we can call people our friends. We look at people, and so we assume that they're sort of less than us. I mean, we all have experienced that to some degree, where you talk to one person who's, let's say, a movie star, and you approach them with a different kind of candor or demeanor than you would a person who is living on the street. Is that right? Should we be doing that? No, the Bible says don't do that. It says, I don't pick favorites. Everybody receives the same amount of word and righteousness as this says in this book. No one gets more and no one gets less. They all get the same. It's how we perceive that person with that righteousness and that person with that righteousness in the state that they're in. And it's so easy for us just to build a judgment and look at that person and go, wow, what a righteous person. And we can look at that person and go, oh, a righteous person. And we make this decision that this person's better than this person simply because of their stature and the place they are. We figure God has more favor on them than he does on this person. That's just wrong thinking. It's absolutely wrong. So what do we do if we find that the people in our relationships and friendships cannot be trusted to who they say they are? I mean, people tell us all the time that how good they are. People rarely talk about how bad they are, unless they're in a point where they've had enough of that lifestyle and they're actually stepping forward and saying, you know what? I was horrible. Think of the testimony Paul and Saul had to give in order to be able to get past the things that he did to Christians, to innocent people who were just trying to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Think about how deep he had to go in his emotions and in his state in order to be able to create a speech that said, I was this person, but now I'm this person. Ananias had every reason to doubt that. And so do people we know. They have every reason to doubt us. If our relationship and our actions differ from what we say, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I'm a Christian. I go over and I pound this guy out. Is that really a Christian? Is that really? Yeah, I'm a Christian. And I go over here and I maneuver money out of this person, or I maneuver this person out of a position of authority because I want that position. Is that really? Is that a Christian? All that becomes is a game of labels after that. So what do we do if we find that the people in our relationships and friendships cannot be trusted who they say they are? What do we do if the people who are in our life are absent? They're not there when they said they would be. They're not there when they promised us that everything would be okay. Well, the answer to that is very, very easy. We have to be strong in ourself first. If we're not strong in ourself, we can't be strong with other people. And the way we do that, we start with forgiveness. If people make mistakes, we need to forgive them and not look beyond the mistake and not make the person the mistake and not make the mistake the person. Everybody makes mistakes. Because 1/3 of the time, it doesn't matter what people say or what they do or how they act towards us. None of that matters. Because they're going to hate you anyway. Simply because they have a predisposition to something about you that they just don't like. And the other 1/3 of the time, I don't know. I don't know why we spend so much time trying to control others when all we have to do is change ourselves. Because when we make those judgment calls of people, that means we're trying to control who they are based on our thinking. And when we try to control people based on our thinking, then our thinking must be off. Because nowhere in here does it say anything about controlling people. Jesus said to love people. It said treat them like you want to be treated. So if we want to be treated like we're under control, then I guess maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we grew up with that and we're just unaware that there's options around having that sort of a lifestyle. And it happens, I happen to think that every mistake that we make is out of complete ignorance. It would have to be. Because if we don't have a solid understanding of this, and we try to live life based on our thought processes of just skimming through the book, then we're going to make mistakes. And those mistakes are going to hurt us, and they're going to hurt other people. And people are going to look at us and say, what's this person? Simply because they have a better understanding of the Bible than we do. And so when we do the things that offend them, that go against the teachings in the Bible, it's not necessarily because we're such a bad person. It's just because we lack the knowledge that goes along with living a life according to this book. You see where I'm going with this? A mistake that will affect people, and in the meantime, will affect us in the long run. When they finally lose grip, it's going to, how do I say this? When people are trying to control you through rumors and things like that, all they're doing is pulling you back in this huge slingshot. And once the stories get so complicated and they get so grandiose and so magnificent in their mind, there's more details to hang on to. And when one of those details slips, they lose grip on that elastic band, and all it does is shoot you forward to some place you had never dreamed you would ever be because of the efforts of that person doing evil against you. That's how God works. And that's what it says in here. It says that when people trying to do things against you, it will boomerang in your favor, and it will backfire against them. Because it says, Genesis 12:3, and I know, I've heard this before, that this verse only applies to the Israelites. I was told that. It says, Genesis 12:3 in the NIV, I will bless those who will bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. Now, I was told this to my face. Oh, no, it doesn't apply to you. That only applies to the Israelites. No, it says, I will bless those who bless you, who bless Israel. So if I'm going to bless somebody from Israel, or I'm going to bless somebody who I think is from Israel, or I'm going to bless somebody who, just because it says to do that, it says bless all people. So if I bless all people, could it be 1/3 of the time I'm going to actually bless an Israelite? Here's another take on that. I recited that verse, and then so I said to the guy, I said, so with that, when I do good to all people and bless all with positive interactions so that they are not harmed in any way, then I could be blessing the descendants of Israel without realizing it. And he went, so his understanding of that verse and my understanding of that verse were completely different, but they were so much the same. But then I went on and I said, how do you know that I'm not a descendant of Israel? How do I know that anyone in this room is not a descendant of Israel unless you actually come from there? There's tribes that moved away from Israel. So are they discounted? Do we not pay attention to those Israelites that are no longer in Israel? Are they still Israelites? Are they still God's people wandering the earth trying to make life the best that they can? And did some of that spill off into other people who are not Israelites? Well, let's look. Romans 11:17, if some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, do not consider yourself to be superior to those other branches. So we're grafted in. Where Israelites have refused to accept and acknowledge Jesus Christ, those that accept Jesus are grafted in. So does that mean we're not Israelites? I don't know. There's stories and teachings on that, but I don't know that it goes deep enough in order for us to be able to clarify that you're not an Israelite, you're not an Israelite, I'm not an Israelite. But you could be an Israelite. You could be an Israelite. I could be an Israelite. We don't know, unless we do genealogy. But genealogy is only 90% accurate. If there's a gray area, like in my family, my mother's side didn't appear until the 11th century in Scotland. So where do we go with that? Was there an Israelite in there somewhere? We don't know. So by taking a hard-line approach or a stance towards somebody, anybody who claims to be a Christian, means that we're just making a mistake. Mistakes are so easy to make. We make mistakes every single day. Some we acknowledge, some we don't know. Some we're oblivious to. That's the power of forgiveness, is because if you make a mistake, even if you do something that's deliberate and it creates problems for other people, was it a mistake? Or was it necessary? If we do things that are necessary, we need to follow the laws of the land. God put those people in place, in powers of authority. And it says, honor everyone in heaven. And it says, honor the powers of authority, because God put them there. So those are our requirements. We're supposed to be kind to everyone. We're supposed to respect people. We're supposed to instruct the ones that are definitely off the path. And we're supposed to counsel the ones who have stepped off the path without realizing. Nowhere in it does it say, talk behind this person's back. Nowhere does it say, do things behind this person's back. It doesn't say that anywhere. Judas tried that, and it didn't pan out well for him. So that's the message for today. It's all about recipients' name, but more importantly, it's about the people who are recipients of our actions and our beliefs and what we say. So if we wrap our head around all of that thinking, then how can we go wrong? Now, I just want to close with this. Romans 11:22 in the NIV, it says, consider, therefore, the kindness and the sternness of God. Sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. That's very clear words. Kindness goes a long ways. Kindness goes ahead of you, just as much as our harsh edges go ahead of us, just like our kindness goes ahead of us. If we're constant in harsh thinking, then that goes ahead, just like Saul experienced. He continually had to defend himself, that's not who the person he was anymore. He changed. He was converted because of the beauty of the conversion through Jesus Christ, where the scales fell from his eyes and suddenly he saw. I think that's all we need on an individual basis. We just need some way to get the scales off of our eyes. Sometimes we're trapped in this cycle of darkness. We don't know how to get out of it. It's like fighting your way out of a wet plastic bag, not a paper bag. Paper bag rips. Plastic doesn't. And when you're continually punching at that bag, unless you have the right way to get out of that, You're just going to continue doing that. And people are going to suffer. So, Father God, I pray, Father, that you would just pour down your kindness on each one of us, Lord. Pour down your kindness that we may understand the person next to us, however diverse and creative and evil those motives may be, Lord. They're acting out of ignorance, and I just pray that you would just remove that ignorance element and give us the power to be able to discern what is right and what is wrong. I pray all of these things, Lord, in your holy, precious name. Amen. Thank you.